The
Gives us
market will overwhelm all of the manipulations. All it takes is enough people waking up and going toward the market. And once all of the shorts are exposed and all of that stuff, it'll explode to the upside. And the people that are currently doing all of the raping and pillaging will end up on the other side of the situation. Hi, everybody. This is Mike Maloney, and I have Jeff Clark and Chris Martinson with me again. So, Jeff, take it away. You're the moderator here.
Well, it's great to be back with you again, Mike. And Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks. It's great to be back with both of you guys here today.
Yes, this will be fun. Let's dive right into it because there's several topics I want to try and bounce off of you guys. The first is I did get a lot of attention, a lot of feedback on the article I wrote on currency creation versus bullion production. And we'll throw the first chart up there, but basically I was amazed at how much currency creation the Fed, just the Fed, not even the other countries, are going to, the Fed is going to do. It's going to be $120 billion per month. So I thought I thought I would compare that to how much gold and silver we produce on a monthly basis. And you'll see from that first chart, it's not even close. We produce 13.6 billion per month in gold based on last year's production levels, only 1.2 billion in silver per month, again, compared to 120 billion in currency creation. So Mike, what's your reaction to that? It just flabbergasted me, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing that especially when you look at silver, basically silver is running at a rate of 1/100th of currency creation. And one of the things that I don't think you just covered, Jeff, was that the gold and silver, this is global production. Am I correct?
It is. That is global production. So it's not even an apples to apples comparison.
Right. And this is the currency creation is only the US. It's not global. If you made this global, the silver production wouldn't be 1/100th, it'd be what, like 1/300th or 1/500th of the total currency creation that's going on this planet. What this chart really brings out for me is the very high value of silver and how it's currently undervalued. You can see in this chart that it should have far greater value. And the day that we have monetary demand, when people are going back to silver to protect their assets, when gold reaches a certain price level and people think, well, that's really expensive compared to what it was just a few years ago, they're going to start rushing towards silver. And that monetary demand is going to just make a huge difference. I'm expecting an explosion. What do you think, Chris?
I would agree. I'm a big fan of all kinds of hard assets because the currency printing, that's a lot of fun, right? It gets you invited back to Davos if you're a central banker, and the billionaire crowd claps for you and says, job well done, thank you very much, all of that. But we all know how this story ends. You print, and eventually the claims, which is what a printed currency unit is, it's a claim on what, right? We're talking about gold and silver, but all of a sudden the psychology shifts and people say, I don't really want to hold, what just got auctioned yesterday with some sovereign government, maybe Austria, I forget, 30-year bonds, 0% interest. Like, why even hold an auction? Like, just makes no sense, right? So that nonsensical stuff continues until people finally realize and they wake up and they go, wow, there's way more claims than there is real stuff out there. I think I'd rather own some real stuff for a period of time. That's everything you've talked about for a long time, Mike, myself as well. I think we're getting closer to the time, though, where people recognize that and do what they can to get into real stuff.
Yeah, you said it was nonsensical. It'll be the day that the public figures out this is nonsensical. It's that simple. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, guys. So let's jump to the next topic, and that is, are we living in a completely unethical world at this point in time, a completely manipulated world? And I want to draw your attention to two specific articles. This first one shows that several global banks were moving large amounts of illicit funds over a 2-decade period of time. That investigation is still ongoing. And then there's this other one from Deutsche Bank where a spoofer tells the jury that his bosses actually showed him how to manipulate gold and silver prices, and it was so common that he thought it was okay to do. So, Mike, what do you think about all these events that are happening? Is this just devolving into a completely unethical, manipulated world, or am I overreacting?
Well, I would say that it's getting worse, but I would say that we've pretty much never lived in a completely ethical world. That's like a fantasy. It doesn't really exist. And we took a big step down the minute the Federal Reserve Act was passed. But yes, what these articles and that one about all of the money laundering that Deutsche Bank and all of the big banks around the world have been doing for the past 2 decades, this exceeds $1 trillion. It's enormous. And they're aiding and abetting criminals, meaning that these are criminal institutions themselves. And then when it comes to manipulating gold and silver, yes, but thank God, or there wouldn't be an opportunity here.
Very good point. That's right. It gives
the market will overwhelm all of the manipulations. All it takes is enough people waking up and going toward the market. And once all of the shorts are exposed and all of that stuff, it'll explode to the upside. And the people that are currently doing all of the raping and pillaging will end up on the other side of the situation.
That's right. That's a good point. The market as a whole is much bigger than the manipulators are, and so that day is coming. So, yeah. Chris, what do you make of all this, though?
This is equivalent to what I've been tracking in all the COVID stuff. Where like Fauci comes out and in an interview with Jennifer Garner, I guess he was a little starstruck, forgot his talking points, and said, "Oh yeah, I'm taking vitamin D and vitamin C." Of course he is, and he never suggested the public should do that. And I don't know how to make sense of that, but it's in the same vein is what we're seeing with this financial scandal going on here with all the banks and everything, right? And so look at this though. David Sood, head of research at IS Consilium, writes, "There is no better mechanism in the world for laundering money than gold." This is his response to that thing. And I tweeted that right out. And I said, actually, there's no better mechanism than corrupt banks and a lack of enforcement for laundering money. I mean, gold can't even hold a dim candle, but you can see them circling the wagons. It's like, it's not us. It's honest money. That's what's making us go bad. It's not our corrupt ways. Looking like UBS gets dinged over and over and over again, right? The HSBC gets dinged over and over and over again. They were taking money through windows and suitcases in Mexico, got caught for that, right? But no criminal penalties, right? And so it just keeps going on and on and on. So this to me is all in the context of the fourth turning. We're in the crisis turning, which is all about loss of faith in institutions and all of that. So yes, these are corrupt organizations, and they've faced no legit enforcement in my adult lifetime. And so I think that's why we're going to get more of it, not less.
One of the things that gets me about this is that, like at the end of one of the articles I read, it was talking about how they're actually trying to go after the Bitcoin people and stuff, saying that is the opportunity for money laundering. And now you're showing me that they're blaming it on gold. And 99.99999% of all of the criminal activity that takes place that has a transaction, a monetary transaction, is done in US dollars. And when you're talking about those suitcases, Chris, you're talking about $100 Federal Reserve notes. It's the Federal Reserve that is the intermediary, the medium of exchange. They create the medium of exchange it isn't gold. How much gold is used in any illicit transaction? That can't be 1/1,000,000th of 1% on this planet. Cryptocurrencies, it might be a little bit larger, but it's hard to do an illicit transaction in gold. It's something that you've got locked up somewhere or in some storage account. You have to get it, has to be shipped. The cryptocurrencies are a little easier, but even those, it pales in comparison to the transactions that are done in US dollars. So if you want to limit the crime that's going on, eliminate fiat currencies. Go back to honest money.
Yeah, right. And in the end, honest money will win. Maybe a torturous road to get there, but we will get there at some point. So, okay, thank you guys. On to the next one real quick. There's an interesting article from Mish this week where he talks about the consumer mood in the U.S. in particular seems to be darkening, that many people are coming to this conclusion that, gee, this recovery is going to take longer than we thought. It's not going to be as quick or as robust as we thought. And one of the charts I want to draw your attention to is the number of job offers that are out there in the U.S. right now. They're not increasing, they're decreasing. So my question to you guys is, Mike, if it's going to take longer for this recovery and it's really settling into people that this could take a while, the idea of resilience, which you and Chris have talked about, is going to be increasingly important. So, Mike, you've bought a ranch or buying a ranch. Chris, you've started a farm. But what can the average person do if this recovery is really going to take a lot longer than we had hoped for?
Well, I think actually Chris should start this one because he's got all of the different forms of capital. I'm sort of a specialist in precious metals, economics, finance, and you have to have those. But Chris, why don't you take it away on all the different forms of capital that can make you more resilient during these periods?
Well, it's no secret that and thanks for that intro, both you guys, but I know everybody can't do what I'm doing here. The very first thing that I think we learned from 2008 is for most people, your very first form of resilience has to be around the financial capital that you have, one of the 8 forms. And the very first thing you should do is trim your expenses way before you have to. We saw a lot of people get in trouble with that. They lost their jobs in 2008. They thought for sure they'd get one soon. Then 2009 came and they're eating through their savings and then they're scrambling. The lesson here is that if you think your job is in peril at all, just skinny everything way back, as soon as possible. So that's part one. Part two is everybody's got to figure out how to have multiple income streams, just to stick to this one financial capital form. And that's something that I'm doing here is I'm trying to figure out all the different ways to have different income streams. I've got a property that's too big for me to work. So I'm inviting young people in, but I'm inviting entrepreneurs in. I don't just want somebody who's good at growing cabbage or something. I want somebody who knows how to turn that cabbage into dollars or gold or silver or a fair barter exchange or whatever the story is. But we have the opportunity to do lumber here, maple syrup. Maybe they could start a heirloom seed company. I don't actually care what the story is. I'm looking for people who can come and have that entrepreneurial spirit, because I think we're going to have to scramble for a while, because I actually think the dark side of this period we're in is the failure of our currency system. I don't see any evidence that the authorities are going to stop until they just blow that thing up. And at that point, you're going to need a lot of resilience. And that would include social capital, living capital, material capital, your emotional capital, all these forms of capital, which is something, honestly, I could drone on about forever. So that's kind of my approach right now. Buckle up.
Yeah, you've got build a circle of friends that you can rely on, right? And you've often told people to start a garden. This is a time where people have to get prepared, I believe, for the absolute worst. And then if it doesn't happen, that's great. And one of the things about a period of time like this is the safe havens are actually the things that that have the biggest return in absolute purchasing power. When you're buying gold, silver, and if it turns out that cryptos are going to be a great place to be, they're going to have growth that like you've never seen. It's going to make the NASDAQ bubble and the bubbles that the Fed has created over the past 20 years, those are going to pale in comparison toward the rush that you see toward gold, silver. And then another thing is the hard assets such as land. And I was lucky enough, I just last weekend sold some properties that I had at the beach, and I got what I had in them out of them, and I was happy with that. I just wanted to unload them. And because they're in the city, they're right in the middle of a tourist, one of the areas that the better an area is doing, the more it's going to suffer from this collapse. One of the things about Puerto Rico that I've noticed, they have had so much adversity. They are used to having to deal without power. I've had 5 power outages in the past week. They're used to having things shut down for a while, and no banking system, this and that. And so what I'm amazed at is the number of restaurants that reopened after they closed the economy here, because they kept it completely closed for like 3 months. I expected, 60% of the businesses or 70% to open, and probably 80, 90% of them reopened. I was amazed. But the knock-on effects that happen, right now, they're doing forbearance, where banks are agreeing to put off payments on mortgages and leases for a certain number of months. But then when this is declared like over with and everybody's back to work, they owe their current month's rent plus the months that they did that they were forgiven. So they're going to owe all of that. And they've got lower income coming in from their businesses, which means they've got to cut way back on their expenditures, which feeds into the economy. The expenditures are somebody else's income. And this whole thing is this downward spiral that most commentators, the regular financial media, the government, I think they know this, and they're trying not to admit it because they know that everybody will just stop spending and start saving and get scared if they know what's going on. But I agree. This is potentially total financial collapse.
And buying silver is something that almost anyone should be able to do, even on a low budget, I think is your point, right, Mike? So
yeah, and a little bit of gold. I buy 1 ounce of gold for every 500 ounces of silver. But somebody, if they're just starting out, might want to buy like 1 ounce of gold and a tube of silver and go from there. Gold is going to be in a crisis. Silver isn't going to be the thing that people go toward first. They're going to go toward gold. And so it will be in high demand. It'll be something that even if the currency doesn't work anymore, you're going to be able to trade that gold for real stuff.
Well, that's great advice, Mike and Chris. Thank you very much. And by the way, both of you are going to be speaking at the upcoming Peak Prosperity Conference, which is titled How to Prosper in the Post-COVID Future. Not how to survive. I love this title. It's how to prosper in the post-COVID future. So can we get a sneak peek from each of you about what you're going to be talking about at the upcoming conference?
Well, one of my topics will be, the shift in world monetary system, because I wrote about that back in 2005, 6, 7, and I've been giving presentations on it, live presentations on the shift in the world monetary system since 2009, I believe. And it's taking longer than I thought, but it is playing out like I thought it would play out. It's just sort of stretched out over time. But the bigger this is in magnitude and the more they do to put it off, the worse it's going to be.
That's great. Chris, what are you going to be talking about? Can you give us a sneak peek?
Sure thing. It's really pleased to be having this conference, in a post-COVID world. We're doing it online, obviously, this year. And so what I like to do at the outset, we have so many great experts coming in, like Mike, just a really big list this year. So what I like to do is provide the framing. I talk about things in a 3E framework, which is economy, energy, environment. It's a systems view. I'm a kind of a systems thinker. I think there's a lot of value in understanding how these systems come together. So I'll have some data from each one of those, sort of putting it together, that hopefully provides some nice context for what everybody else is going to say, from DeMartino Booth and what she might say about the Fed to Joel Salatin and what he's going to say about farming, right? So everything fits under that 3E framework. So that's what I do. I like to get some current data and make sure we're all on the same page so that everything else going on just fits in nicely.
That sounds great. It's going to be exciting. We're going to put a link up here that you can sign up for the conference. There is an early bird discount you can get for that. So check that out. I'll be speaking there as well on gold and even some mining stocks. So we hope you join us there. So Mike and Chris, thanks so much for joining me again this week, and we will talk to you next time.
Thanks, and bye, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff. It was a great conversation.